Hello, everybody, and welcome to Goldster's PPG. And I don't know why my phone has just pinged when it's turned off and everything's turned off. So really good to see you all. And I'm really pleased today to welcome Denise McGahan. And this is a very special PPG for me because Denise and I were actually at school together. I haven't seen her for years and years, far too long. So great to see her on Zoom. And then I spotted on LinkedIn the other day, she has a new book out, which is so Goldster and very PPG. It's called Anthology. It's one of the many things that we're going to talk about today. So Denise, welcome to Goldster. I'm so glad you were able to come along today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here, Lucinda, and great to see you. Really lovely to see you.
So Denise and I knew each other when we had lots of different dreams. And I seem to remember that you were going to live in France.
Yes.
In Belfast.
Yes.
How did that happen?
I fell in love with someone on a Greek holiday and he persuaded me to take the love boat. So yeah, didn't quite make France, but close enough.
But you're now at the stage, and you talk about in your book, you talk about this being midlife, which I love that expression. So tell us about how you got there. So I know that when we first left school and you went to university, you ended up working very much in the city, and now you're doing all sorts of fascinating things with coaching. So we're going to start with your journey after university. You ended up being a management consultant. Can you explain to us what that is and what you do?
Well, my first role when I left university was in systems integration. So I was working for a big consultancy firm, and we were building programs, coding. I was a programmer. So I built part of a financial system for a big organization, and that's really what consulting is: just working with organizations to help them to be more efficient. So some of my roles were in programming, some of them were in writing strategies, some in change management and communications strategies and things like that. So a real wide-ranging, set of roles really, and gigs in different organisations, and worked with some brilliant people. Loved the people I worked with and my clients, but didn't love it for me. And I think I was a consultant for years, but there was always this like little voice in the back of my head that was sort of, I'm going to call that intuition, that was saying, this isn't, you're meant to be doing something and it's not this. And over time that started to really gnaw at me. And I got this sort of sense of, I'm running out of time here. I've got to find it, but I don't know what it is, and I'm running out of time. So it wasn't a great feeling, that sense of frustration. But then from there, up to about 2011, I was a consultant, and then there was a sort of a perfect storm. So my best friend died in her sleep, which was a dreadful shock to all of us. And then one of my children, at this stage, I've got 3 kids living in Belfast. One of them needed a bit more care, a bit more help. So I left consulting, homeschooled my son for a while, and then my sister had given me a homemade soap in the bath, and it felt so nice. I thought, I want to learn how to make this. And so I did. I kind of got on YouTube and I bought loads of books, and I learned how to make bar soap, and I got really nerdy about it. And I set up a little indie business called St. Maron.
And I remember that. They were beautiful products. It wasn't just soap, was it? It was all sorts of just gorgeous skincare.
Yeah, it was basically natural skincare. That's what I got into. It kind of built on from the bar soaps, and I made liquid soaps and oils and balms and all sorts of things, all with that sort of natural sense, natural products. So, and I loved it. It was really quirky, and it kind of felt like who I was meant to be, this sort of independent maker doing something creative. That just felt just perfect for me.
And how did you go about sourcing the ingredients? I mean, you said you kind of looked on YouTube and got books, but did you kind of go on big buying trips? Where did you find them from? Did you kind of literally concoct them in your shed? What was the process?
I concocted them in my shed. So I live in this exhausted old farmhouse, and there was a really dingy old barn, and I took that over as HQ. And I just went online and I sourced different essential oils and the base oils that you need, and the base butters and things, and just played. Initially I started sort of tweaking recipes that were out there, and over time I kind of got up to speed with all the the legislation. It's really highly regulated, as you can imagine. Yeah. And I started making my own. So I did that, and I had a lovely local market, Craft Collective, the North Down Craft Collective. I was part of them, so I sold it in stalls and sorts of things. I got stockists. I won an award at Showcase Island, which is a big trade show down in Dublin. So I was sort of living the dream.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
You said to me before that you felt it was a failure, and yet that everything you've described so far has been remarkable. So what was it that made you think it was a failure, and that made you feel that
it didn't make any money? So you know, it depends how you define failure, really. For me, like the startup business, it should have kind of washed its face. It should have supported me and my family, and I couldn't do that. I was doing everything myself. And you know, there were some bits I was good at, and there were other bits I was dreadful at. And as the time went on,
do you think you weren't good at?
Oh, crikey, production, planning, finance, the numbers, you know, yeah, just thinking commercially. So for me, it was all about the well-being aspect. And you know, if I want you to have a little pocket of well-being in your day, I want you to use that soap in the morning and go, oh, I love that. And that was the bit of me that, you know, I'm meeting my customers and hearing their stories and what it meant to them. All of that was my bag, and the rest of it, which was the stuff that would have made it successful, I actually just wasn't very good at. And eventually it came to the point where, you know, I was working all the hours of the day and not making, you know, making less than the minimum wage. And my husband said, mate, we need you to go back to work. And he said, why don't you coach? You love people. Why don't you go and coach? And that was about 6 years ago now, 7 years ago.
So what did you learn from St. Maron? Yeah,
good question. I think I'd always been quite independent, and I'd always done stuff on my own. And what I learned from St. Maron was actually, do you know what? Sometimes you don't have to do everything on your own. And you know what I should have done was partnered with somebody who was brilliant at that other stuff. You know, that was their gift, and not try to be, you know, putting my energies into something that just isn't mine. So I learned that actually collaboration and partnership and not having to do things on your own is really important. And I also learned to redefine success. So for a long time after St. Maron, it was really painful. The loss of it, actually finally closing the doors, was really painful. And I thought that I had failed, and that it was something kind of intrinsic in me that was the part of the failure. But over time I came to see, well, actually, no, it's not that. I've learned so much about what's important to me, you know, making people happy, our sense of well-being. How do we create a day that just feels beautiful? And it doesn't have to be big, grand, transformative stuff. It can be the little simple pleasures, like a great cuppa in the morning, or like a lovely smelling soap, or a connection with someone else. And so those were the things I took from it. And
so how did you get yourself beyond feeling, you know, this is it, as you said, it was an awful time for you? How do you think you managed to get through that? Was that what inspired you to do coaching? Did you manage to kind of coach yourself through it? Was it through other people helping?
A little bit of everything, really. I suppose time, and then you have, you know, time, you get a different perspective on things, don't you? You see things in a different light. So I think partly that, partly coaching. Like when I trained as an executive coach, and you don't really, perhaps you don't recognize that actually when you do those sorts of trainings. You're doing them because you think you're helping others, but actually you do an awful lot of work on yourself as part of that. So that was helpful. And then really quite early on, about 2016, I decided to do a master's in applied positive psychology. I think that was a game changer for me. I think that just blew my mind. This idea, you know, so positive psychology is kind of the science of how we thrive and flourish. And that for me just rang so many bells, opened so many doors. Just, yeah, I think that just spun everything on its tail, really.
And so with that, what was your undergrad degree in?
Modern languages. I did Spanish and Russian.
And so then going on to just completely different.
Yeah.
How fascinating. And when you did that, what made you choose to do applied psychology?
It was that sense of, you know, how do we play to our strengths? You know, I was always quite interested in that, and I was always really interested in how do we have a life that's meaningful and not necessarily happy, but fulfilled and meaningful. And I just came across an article about Anglia Ruskin, which is where I did my master's, and I just thought, crikey, that's what I need to know. I need to understand that. I need to, you know, because I think that's how I suppose probably it's that intuition again, you know, that kind of the little nudge. Wasn't going to give me the answer on a plate, but was going to say, yeah, give that a go, you know.
Yeah. Brilliant. And so that was what led you onto the idea of coaching. I mean, I know your husband kind of gave you a nudge in that direction, but having done that master's degree, that gave you the confidence, presumably, as well.
Well, it brought, I mean, so I wouldn't call myself a psychologist because my first degree isn't psychology, but I can call myself a positive psychology practitioner. And I use that in my coaching practice for sure. You know, positive psychology is all about our strengths, our natural strengths, how we play into them, our values, you know, how we craft our life around that, the kind of the mindset that we bring to things, how we look at things, how we get fulfillment and life satisfaction. And, you know, I sort of remember one of the first lectures at, in Cambridge was they threw up this big mind map and said, here's positive psychology, and here are all the different areas you could get really interested in. And that was just like, oh my word, you know, it's just so exciting. And I was like, I want to learn all of them. But interestingly, over time, the thing that really caught my eye was identity. And particularly for me, identity in midlife, because I think that's when so many of us actually need to have another run at it.
Yeah,
that's something. So that became my special interest.
I'd love to throw that open to everybody else here. If anybody else has decided, as Denise did, to go back to studying, please do put it in the chat. As you all know, I know you're muted. You can put things in the chat. And if there's anything that you feel you've managed to reinvent at this stage of your life, because I think it's really fascinating how many people I know who have decided around this time of their life, and I know that you've got children, Denise, when friends of mine where children are getting a bit bigger and they feel don't need them so much, have suddenly decided that they're going to make a big change in their life. And I think it's a really powerful time of life, actually. You know, we're all going through a lot of stresses with aging parents or dying parents, and children perhaps growing up, and, you know, one of my friends is coping with dying parents and adolescent children and feels that her life is utterly squeezed. And, you know, I think there's a lot of people who get caught in that, but it's also a time of immense creativity. Why do you think that is? What is it about this midlife that makes us want to do something new?
I think because we've got so much more in us. And I think, you know, if you've the will and the appetite to look at it again, I think you kind of know who you are, and you get to this point where you know what you don't want, and even if you don't know what you want, you know what you don't want, and you've got such a rich lifetime of experience to draw on to start thinking about, you know, what would this next chapter look like. There's a chap called David Brooks who wrote a book called The Second Mountain, and I think it's called The Second Mountain, and his premise is really interesting. He says, you know, as you go through life, you climb this mountain, and, you know, it's your career or, you know, what you put your time into if you don't have a career, you know, that thing. And it's oftentimes guided by what our parents think we should do, or what society tells us, people like you do X. And so we climb this mountain, and then we get to the top of it and we're exhausted and all our energy's gone to it, and we get to the top and then we think, oh, that wasn't my mountain. That wasn't my mountain to climb. That one over there is my mountain. So from that peak, you get to see the second mountain, and that's yours. And so I think if you have appetite for it, and the will to go again, and to put your energies into something that's more meaningful for you, I think that can be really enriching. Just, yeah, really helpful.
I love the idea of a second mountain. I don't know what other people think here, but I think that's wonderful. I might have to try and find that book. But talking of books, let's get on to your book. Let's talk about anthology. So, How the Stories We Tell Shape Who We Become. It's a beautiful cover as well. It's very tactile. I'm going to put a link in the chat, everybody, for this. It's on Kindle and paperback. But tell us about it. What inspired you to write it? Because I know when we were little, we both wanted to be writers. And you know, and we are now both writers. But what was it that gave you that push to think, I'm finally going to write something that I'm going to publish?
Well, it's funny, you know, we always talked about writing, and I always wanted to be a writer. So that was probably my second mountain. At 50, I sort of went, oh, do you know what? I've been so lucky, but that's the thing that's missing. So I sort of set myself a goal, and I had always written, you know, I had always written bits and bobs over my life, but I decided I would really go for it. And I joined the Bestseller Academy, which is an online writing community, and I wrote a novel. In 4 months, I wrote a novel, and surprised myself. But anthology was actually my master project for my master's. So, you know, your major project at the end of your master's, you either do some research or what they call an artifact, and mine was the book. So I sketched out, I did all the research behind it. I sketched out the chapters. I had some sample chapters, and that was what I submitted as my major project. And I thought I would finish it because I was so passionate about it. But work got in the way, family got busy, you know, life got in the way, and I set it to one side. And then after a while, I couldn't remember the thread of it. I lost the thread. But once I'd finished the novel, which I'm also going to publish. Once I finished the novel, I thought, that's unfinished business, and it's really annoying me because I've got something I want to say, and that's probably as good a reason to write a non-fiction book as any, I suppose. But that was what I felt. I thought positive psychology had been such a game changer for me. I wanted to share what I'd learned. So I went back to it. Luckily, in the Bestseller Academy, I found a self-help non-fiction editor who lived in Canada, and I just approached her and said, I have these chapters, you know, can you book coach me? Can you coach me so I finish it? And that's what she did. So yeah, so that was it, done. And this finished at the end of last year and published it in May.
Well, tell us about the ethos behind anthology. Talk us through the book and how, well, any discoveries that you came to about yourself while you were writing it and that you think people will come to while they're reading it, or that you hope they'd come to.
Well, it is very much that idea of, you know, sort of identity development in midlife, that we can change our identity. We can decide we're some, you know, we decide who we are at any stage in life. And I think, you know, previously we probably thought, well, you know, that's sort of once you're sort of a bit set in stone earlier on in life, there's not much more you can come to. And when I coach people, I often get people who say, you know, this is me, this is it, this is as good as it gets. And I really wanted to kind of challenge that assumption and say, really? Because I think there's a lot more you haven't explored yet. So the book takes you through some kind of ideas around identity and actually how the stories we tell about ourselves shape so much of our behaviors and our emotions and how we present ourselves to others. So if I tell you I'm terrible at finance, you know, that's what you'll come to believe about me. That actually happens to be true, but you know, that's you know, you'll come to believe that about me. If I tell you I'm an awesome writer, you might accept that as well. You know, that's so the stories we tell get socialized, and so it matters that you choose your own stories, and you make them as vibrant and meaningful and purposeful and as passionate as you can. So it takes you through kind of how identity is framed and built, and how story comes into that, the life stories that we collect, and what they can do for you in terms of building a more expansive sense of self. But it takes sort of the format is I tell you a story about me in the hope that you might feel safe to tell your stories, and some of them are really personal, and then I give you a wee bit of positive psychology. So here's some of the research around a particular area, and the idea is to get you really comfortable in your core. So I call it the comfort of your skin, and that's that sense of just accept and admire and appreciate all the beauty that you are. And then it's kind of lighting small fires. So then what else could there be? How do we think about your passions, for example? If I ask you to tell me what you're passionate about, could you? You know, at this stage in your life, what are you really passionate about? So
well, that's a great question to put out to the audience, actually.
mm-hmm.
Seriously, people put in the chat, what is it that you're passionate about? And if you're not and you can't think of anything, then maybe that's something you need to start thinking about. Would you say that, Denise?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So your passion was writing, or the studying, or both? Writing was the
both. Love of learning, absolutely love learning, and writing. I think writing's just everything I hoped it would be. Everything we talked about, actually, Lucinda, it's yeah. what it has been for me, and that feels brilliant. Yeah, and so it's things like that, and just this idea, actually, the really critical bit, the anti-aging antidote, is actually building your curiosity, because some of us are more curious individuals naturally, but it wanes as we get older if you're not paying attention to it. So really making sure you kind of develop a practice of building that strength of curiosity, which we can all do, really helps build a more expansive and positive life in this mid stage.
So for anyone who feels that they're lacking in that, what would be, you say we can all build it, we can all create it. What would you suggest to anybody listening today? How should they go about finding that curiosity again in life?
I'd say look up, because I think we get I think we can get really stuck in the grooves of our habits and our rituals and patterns and routines, and we hang out with the same sort of people. We don't maybe think about a new skill or a new interest. We maybe just go to the same things we read all the time. We maybe take the same route if we're going somewhere. You know, I just say, look up, change it up. You know, maybe read an article, maybe have a conversation with a stranger on a bus. You never know where that leads, and just pay attention to the things that make your heart flutter, or your energy, or just, you know, if something feels a bit shiny to you, don't just dismiss it. What's the next step you would take to find out a wee bit more about that? I mean, I feel like I'm probably preaching to the converted, because, you know, if you're using Goldster, you're probably dipping into all sorts of different things. But I would say that I said, just pay attention, get curious, ask questions, don't make assumptions. Ask yourself, what assumptions am I making here? You know, that might be a good place to start.
And we've got a comment here. This is fascinating, so insightful. For me, it's again, love of learning and curiosity, as well as bringing the natural world to life for people, and vice versa. I love that. So it's finding that real love in, whether that's nature, whether that's reading, whether that's, I don't know, riding your motorbike, whatever it is finding that love and sticking to it. And you talked about the stories we tell ourselves. And I was thinking when you said that, so much of the stories that perhaps we then tell other people about ourselves are things that we have been told, perhaps at school or by family, or, you know, you're always the noisy one, or you're never going to be good at this. And do you think that happens, that people have to rewrite what they've been told by teachers or parents or friends?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's, you know, a large part of our narrative identity can be given to us by other people. And sometimes you just don't question it. You're so used to that. You don't think, well, where did that story come from? And is that mine? Or did I get given that? And so the book talks a lot about that. You're right, Lucinda, at the start, it talks about that sense of how do you learn which are the stories that were given you that actually don't really fit. And then maybe they did at some point in your life, but you know what, you've grown up. You're a big
exactly
now, and that's not you anymore. And so you don't need to carry that one. You need to create a new one that reflects and expresses everything that you are at this stage in your life. So refreshing the library, the reference library, if you like, is healthy. It's a good thing to do.
And I've got a comment that's come to me. And by the way, everybody, if you don't want to write it to everybody, you can just send it straight to me on the chat. I changed my life after a very nasty divorce. I'm sure that's something that has happened to a lot of people. I went from being in PR to training as a therapist. Well, that's really fascinating, actually. So again, another kind of major midlife change, and caused by something that, of course, for many people, that would be the end of everything. But to make that, I really thank you for sending that. I really think that is a fascinating thing to do, to show that actually out of something so heartbreaking can become a really amazing new major part of life. Do you find that when you're coaching people, Denise? Do you think it's often those times that we think are the worst times in our lives that can actually create more joy?
Absolutely. There's a lot of research around that, actually, that sort of post-traumatic growth as an area, you know, you know, a divorce or a bereavement or something along those lines can really accelerate you tapping into something that actually, what am I going to do with my life now? Where will I find meaning? So you know, therapy, perfect example. You know, actually, I'm going to help people. I know where my strengths are and how I can make for a better world. And oftentimes you'll see people thinking about those more generative roles that they can play.
Yeah. Brilliant. So you also, the ethos of this book anthology, you've carried through to doing retreats, and I'm going to put a link in the chat here. Tell us about these retreats. What happens and where are they held, and is anybody able to come to them?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was always one of my dreams, actually. Write the book, and I'd actually love to work with people on those sorts of subjects and help them. And I have a friend, a colleague, and a brilliant coach called Caroline Duffy, and she and I would be traveling around, working together around the States, and we would talk about this, jet lagged in lounges in different places. Wouldn't it be cool if we did a retreat? And you know, Caroline's really interested in this sort of work as well. And so in lockdown, we decided, I'd written the book, and we just decided, let's go for it. Let's start. So with Anthology Retreats was born, and that's our sort of passion project. And then the sort of mission is we help people become themselves. So that's the work I'm really interested in, helping people discover more of their potential, expanding their sense of self and identity, and helping them find fulfillment and meaning in their life. And happiness is a byproduct for me, but that comes along for the ride in a way. So our first one was actually this weekend, and it was in Killeavy Castle in County Armagh in Ireland, and it was fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic. It exceeded our dreams. I think we were looking at each other and grinning like loons. We had brilliant women, and it was really inspiring. I felt very moved actually as we were wrapping up. I just thought, oh, this was it. This was what I was looking for, and it's fantastic. So the next one will be in spring, probably somewhere in Europe. We're going to sort of shake it up a bit, but the work we do is very much around that sense of coming, working on your core, getting a sense of kind of actually what are the resources I have, and then what's possible for me beyond that. So, and the people that we had last weekend, different stages in life, different needs, and working really hard to do their own work, but support one another to get what they needed from it. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that sounds really brilliant. And I think as well that particularly after lockdown and everything, and everyone having been forced to stay away from people, to have that time where you can have that joint sharing is just, whether it's in person as you've done or online, is so important. I think some of you may have come along to the Goldster writing workshop, and I know the tutors felt the same as you did, Denise, that the incredible feeling when people are achieving what they were hoping they would achieve just makes you feel like, wow, that's so great to have been able to inspire. I wasn't one of the tutors, by the way. That's not me blowing my own trumpet. There is the fabulous Martin Edwards, crime writer, and David Marks, who's our own creative writing tutor. But that feeling that you're helping people to achieve their dreams, and in return, that's helping you in your own personal and work life to feel that. So it's such a win-win situation. Wonderful.
It's nice to be able to stand up in front of people and be able to say, I've done the hard yards, I know how rough it is, and for years I did it and I just didn't give up, and now I'm doing work that I really love and I'm really passionate about. It's nice to be able to say, to be congruent around that, and to also celebrate other people's progress and where they're at. It makes you feel very hopeful, and you just see the beauty in us when we come as we are, and we celebrate our individuality. I think that's a really key thing I want us to do. I think where we get so homogenized and so pressured in the stories that we've taken from society about who we should be, the life scripts we follow at any stage in life, I would love us just to write our own and claim our own.
Yes, I always remember being told at school that I was never going to be any good at languages. And so I took that on board, that I was never any good at languages. And when I left school, I went to Vienna as an au pair, and I went to study German. I've never done any German in my life. And after the first class, so you're a natural linguist, I'm going to move you up into the next group. And I thought, wow, I've spent all my adolescence telling people I was no good at languages. And as it was, I just wasn't very good at it with a teacher who wasn't very good at teaching them. Yeah. But when I was with somebody and immersed in it in a country where everybody was speaking that language, it was completely different. And sometimes we just need to learn that not everybody learns in the same way.
Absolutely.
And you find that, I'm guessing, in your work, that you might have to use different approaches with different people. Is that a good challenge to have?
It's a lovely challenge. I really love that. I love coaching. I'm very, you probably guessed, really passionate about it, because I do think I see the difference it makes. And it's just lovely. It is a real privilege to work alongside people and get to know them, and get to understand actually how their brain likes to think, how their brain likes to work. We've all got different ways of accessing that. So some of the work around this is actually just, challenging that. If this didn't work for me, how else do I get it? If it's that important to me, what else will I do to get there? And just go and take it. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for someone else to tell you what you can and can't do. That's a perfect example.
And do you find that when you look back on your career and the bits you loved, the bits you loathed, the bits you thought were a failure, the bits you thought were good, were all of them equally valuable in what you're doing now? Is there anything you wish you'd done differently? Are you grateful for the things that you've done, or do you feel that you wasted time on anything?
I probably thought I wasted time earlier on, but I think it all brought me to where I am now. And I think what that has given me is a compassion for people when they're struggling, or when they feel frustrated, or when they feel stuck. I think, you know, if I know that what that feels like, yeah, I can sort of meet them where they're at. And so I think, you know, maybe that was the journey. Sometimes things don't come to us at a time we want them to come to us at. They come, you know, they come at the time when we need them to come to us. And I think probably all of that experience has made me a better coach. And yeah, I think it's unfurled as it was meant to. I just needed to have a little bit more patience.
I think that's a good thing that maybe we all need to learn. I'm not very good with patience either. So do you get to coach people of all different ages, all different, you know, kind of career backgrounds? What kind of things do you specialize in one thing, or do you just have a really wide spectrum of people that you're working with?
No, I'm a funny little hybrid, really, because I am an executive coach. So I work with organizations. I still do leadership development and programs and team coaching, those sorts of things. And I'll do one-to-one coaching within organizations. But then because I have my positive psychology practitioner hat on, that my special interest is in around identity and through the retreats, which also does one-to-one coaching. That's the work that I like to do there. So I'm a bit of a hybrid, but yeah, people from all walks of life, all ages, from young people I feel quite passionate about because I think they can feel quite lost. And people sort of in later life who feel like, you know, this, as I said, this is it. You know, this is it for me, and it doesn't feel great. And I always, that feels like such a cracker challenge for me, because I'm like, au contraire, there's loads more to you. You just have to explore it and unpack it and be vulnerable, be okay to be the beginner again, and see where that takes you. You know, just get your curiosity and get excited, get a bit excited about stuff.
So maybe this is too difficult, I'm putting you on the spot, but if you were to, and obviously you can't see most of the people here, but if you were to say to people in later life, you know, who are feeling, you know, perhaps they've been bereaved, perhaps they've found that the pandemic has really robbed them of everything they did before, what would be the first kind of 3 things you would tell them to do in order to start changing their mindset and enjoying everyday life more?
Okay, I've said curiosity. I think that's a superpower. Whatever you can do around that to build that practice around being a curious explorer. There's a chap called Todd Kashdan who wrote a great book around curiosity, and he talks about us being curious explorers. So become one of those. Don't set any expectation on anything. Just find things out for the pure interest in it, for no other agenda. Think about the stories you tell about yourself. Notice them. You know, once you start drawing your attention to them, you'll become more aware of those. Oh, I was never this, or I'm not the sort of person who. If you start off a sentence like that, it might need a bit of a rattle. And notice those small pleasures. I think just finding the pleasure in the ordinary, I think, can give us clues to a really beautiful handmade life. I call that handmade life. Just one that's meaningful for us and one that we've curated for ourselves, that isn't perhaps mainstream, it isn't what everybody else or our mates are doing, or, you know, our communities are doing. It's just something that feels authentic and unique to us. I think that's really important as well. And recognize your strengths. You know, what are the things that people always come to you for? There's great work around strengths in positive psychology. There's a free strengths test you can do. There's character strengths test you can do. It's via.org, VIA.org. If you go on there.
Yeah, let me find that and put that in the chat.
That might be a nice starting place, because I think just to accept all the loveliness that we are as well, you know, when you can do that, then you can start getting comfy about exploring. So give that a go.
Right, I'm just going to put that in the chat. Oh, and I've got another comment that's popped up. After my parents died, I felt I could be whoever I wanted to be. That's a really, really interesting point. And maybe that's what we were talking about earlier with parents or friends or partners or teachers telling you who you are, who you should be. Do you think that's something that happens to people quite frequently, that they feel suddenly, oh, I remember feeling that when I went traveling. Oh, I can be whoever I want to be now. No one knows what my name is or what I do or what my personality traits are. So I remember feeling, thank you for that comment, I felt that very much when I went traveling and thought, I'm just meeting people who don't know anything about me and have no preconceptions.
Yeah.
Is that a freeing thing to be? Perhaps it is.
Yeah, travel. I certainly have one of those experiences of just thinking, oh my word, I'm now myself, having that feeling. I think there's a lot to do. I think I've heard from personally from friends, I've heard when you know their parents pass on, to some degree they're released from a role, and that can be awful, but it can also be very liberating. So it's not just around that, it's around kind of the roles that you carry, and again, some you choose to carry and some you don't, and just being intentional about those that you want to honor and carry on, and those that don't really fit you at this stage of life, or you don't really need to do anymore.
It's an interesting comment that made, because somebody actually said to me last week, a friend of mine said, after my second parent died, I realized I didn't have to keep in touch with family members I didn't want to keep in touch with anymore. And that was actually really freeing, used exactly the same word. So yeah, that's just really fascinating to think that although out of, again, like we're talking about the divorce earlier, the other comment, that out of great sadness can come something that does help you create a whole new time in life. And perhaps that's really the essence of your book, of creating this new phase for yourself to be as you want to be, rather than what, as you say, society tells us we should be.
And I suppose the book's saying, don't wait. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for the liberation of an event or traumatic, transformative event as we're talking about. Just do it now. Do something now.
I think that's the most important takeaway from this. Don't wait. Don't ask anybody else for permission. As you say, you've got to do it yourself. So having said which, you have given yourself permission to write a novel. So tell us about your novel. What is it called? When is it coming out?
It's called Alice Larson, and perhaps not surprisingly, it's about a 50-year-old woman whose husband leaves her, and she's devastated. But she decides that to win him back, she needs to learn to become a real woman. She's been kind of coasting through life. So she decides she needs to become a real woman, and she's going to learn from the kind of goddesses of the silver screen, Garbo, Ava Gardner, and Ingrid Bergman, and learn what it means, how to be a real woman, looking at them and how they behaved and acted and so on and so forth. What she doesn't really expect is that they will materialize as figments of her imagination.
That sounds fabulous.
Take her on a journey of self-discovery and identity development. There we have it. There's that theme that keeps knocking at me, but yeah, so that's my novel, and I am going to publish it in about a month's time. I'm really excited about it.
Excellent.
And another one in the pipeline. So I am doing what I said on the tin. I am writing.
Fantastic. That's really, really good. And I know we've got a lot of people here who are writing at the moment. We've got a writing competition, sorry, I couldn't remember the word then, on Goldster as well. So people have been working with our creative writing tutor David Mark and writing things, but also we've just had our Agatha Christie month on the book club, so people have been learning about how to write cozy crime, which in my view is just a lot better than watching the news at the moment. So I hope that everybody is having fun with that. Do let us know how you're getting on. So I'm going to just read a quotation that I saw online, that it's an Alan Turing one, and it was on one of your pages, and you said this is one of your favorite quotations, because I hadn't read it before. I think it's really lovely. Sometimes it is the people no one can imagine anything of who do the things no one can imagine. I'm actually going to put that in the chat because I'd love to know what other people think. What made you choose that particular quotation when you were asked that would be, where did you first read it? Did it speak to you when you first read it?
Yeah, I can't remember where I first read it, but I actually wrote it out on a little piece of card, and I'd used lots of different felt tips, all the colors, and I put it on the fridge because I wanted my children to read it when they went past. I wanted them to have that. So yes, I can't remember where I got it from, but I absolutely love it. Yeah. I suppose that's back to that point around just how beautiful we all are, and to appreciate that beauty in each of us and our uniqueness and our individuality. That I feel really passionate about that. So I think that speaks to that, really.
And do you think being a parent is what really helped you into your idea of becoming a coach? Because I mean, you must have had to deal with a huge amount, with children growing up and with your career and everything, being quite difficult at times, as it really can be. Do you think that's helped you and made you, when you did your master's degree, did you keep thinking, oh, this can apply to my family? Or do you think it's completely separate?
Well, I think it can apply to them, but they can't stand me being a coach. They'll be like, don't do that voice, you're doing the voice. So they're becoming a country mile off. So yeah, I don't know that. I'm hoping that at some point in the, there is that sense of, as I said, when I did my map, there was so much that I learned. I just thought, God, I wish I'd known this years ago, and thank God I know it now. And how do I share it? So hopefully the conversations that we've had around the table, my husband's really interested in it now. I think it's probably been quite changing for him in lots of ways, just through the conversations we've had. Hopefully things will percolate and trickle in. You can only do your best on that front, I think, can't you?
And have your children read your books?
Well, funny, my daughter's read Alice Larson, and my son, I went to visit him, my eldest son, I went to visit him he's in Nottingham, and he was showing me his new bedroom, and just as I was leaving the room, that was propped up on the top of his wardrobe, and I said, and he said, oh, didn't want you to see that. And he and his friend Holly had bought it because they were going to read it and then tell me after they've read it. So I don't know how far they've got.
Oh, fantastic. How lovely. So that'll hopefully go around the university and everyone else will be reading it.
Yes, preempting midlife.
But really, I mean, I haven't had a chance to finish reading the whole thing, but this doesn't have to just apply to midlife, does it?
No, it really doesn't. I mean, at any stage in life, it's about tapping into those resources that you have, and then thinking about what's possible for you, and actually, how do you craft and create a life that just feels vibrant, feels vital, feels like people, to as I was saying, what you were here to do.
Yeah. We've got a comment here, such an encouraging quotation about the Alan Turing one. And another one, I've submitted my story. Well done for this, well done. And good luck to everyone else. So great to hear, well done. Wow, you finished the story and submitted it. Excellent news. I'm just going to tell everybody what's coming up. We're going to come back in just a minute, Denise. I'm going to tell everyone what's coming up on Goldster. So let me just get my page open. So coming up on PPG next, we have Humphrey next week is talking to Lynn O'Donnell, the war correspondent, an author and award-winning war reporter. She reported from Afghanistan until the Taliban takeover in August last year. On a return assignment this summer, Taliban officials accused her of spying and forced her to publish a confession. Back in London, Lynn was rushed to hospital with a growth on her pancreas. She is now recovering from surgery. She is going to be talking to Humphrey Hawksley. Gosh, what an extraordinary, I thought I'd had a bad year. She's had a terrible one. What an incredible story. And I know, as always with Humphrey, it will be very inspirational. And then the following week is Alistair Hicknell, who is back talking to Mark Lawrenson. He was an Irish international footballer who found fame with Liverpool, played for several other clubs and tried his hands at management before going on to become one of the most respected pundits in the game. And then just to go into November, just to say that Humphrey will be talking to Rosie Stancer and her crew. We don't know where they are, of course. Rosie is our own PPG presenter normally, but at the moment she is doing her other job, which is, of course, being an explorer. She's just so cool. And she's supposed to be in the Sinai Desert, but as we know, with politics of being what they are at the moment, things have been quite difficult for Rosie and the crew, but from wherever they are, they're going to be chatting to Humphrey about that. And on the 8th of November, I'm going to be talking to Carolyn Hornblow, who is a nurse. She was a nurse for end-of-life care, and then she wrote a book that she felt was really needed. Her book is called After a Life-Threatening Diagnosis, ... What's Next? And it's such an important book, I feel. And then to tell you what's coming up on the book club, we've got lots of exciting things coming up. So this week, you've got Humphrey with you on both days, and he is talking on Thursday to Robert Sawyer, who is a science fiction writer. He's the author of Flash Forward, and he's written all about the genre of science fiction. Then we have got him talking to Jake Needham, the author of The 19. There were 19 hijackers you know about and one you don't. What a great strapline that is. And then the following week, I will be back with Nicola Solomon, who is from the Society of Authors. She's a really interesting woman. She's the chief exec of the Society of Authors, and she's just a really, really fascinating woman. She's going to talk about the history of the society, the authors' estates that they manage, and what it's like working for such an organization. And then I'm just going to tell you one more person. On the 21st of October, I'm talking to this woman, Alison Hill, not Pauline Gower. Pauline Gower was the pioneering leader of the Spitfire women, and Alison Hill has spent a long time. She's really interesting researcher. She's met so many female pilots from the Second World War. She's written incredible articles and things about them, and she's finally got this published. I'm so glad. I've known for years that she's been trying to get this book published, and it's such an interesting story. So I hope that you will be back and joining us for all of those. So Denise, to come back to you now. So what are you going to do next? You've mentioned that you've got a second novel in the offing. Do you have a second non-fiction book, do you think, or do you think anthology was the story that you wanted to tell, or has writing anthology inspired you to work on anything else?
No, I think that never say never, but I think that was what I wanted to say. And having said it, I don't feel like there's nothing else I want to say on the non-fiction. But fiction, absolutely. I just want to keep writing. I just love it. And so I feel like I've got that happy blend in work that feels meaningful and that can make a positive contribution, and then taking myself off in worlds of my own making, satisfying my curiosity. That feels like a perfect blend.
Brilliant. And so the second novel, are you ready to talk about that, or are you still in the planning process?
No, I'm still in that. I'm still in the planning process for that. We've been so busy with the retreats. I'm not getting to it. It's a bit frustrating at the moment, but I'll get there. It's busy, but it's good. But
it will happen at the right time. I found it really interesting when you said that you'd been working on anthology when you were studying, and then you started to work on the novel, and that took over, and then you didn't go back to anthology for a while. And I feel the fact that you've just said, you feel everything you should have said is in the book. Doesn't it just show you that you waited until the right time in your life to complete writing anthology?
Yeah.
A really good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really glad I did. I mean, it did, as I said, it felt really unfinished business. It was just like a sort of an itchy scratch that I needed to sort out. And it's really satisfying actually getting to the finishing something. I think so often we can have these things that we really want to do, and then, as I said, life gets in the way, or stuff gets in the way, or we get in our own way, and then we don't take it over the line, we don't finish it, and that can be a huge source of frustration for people. So no matter what the outcome of it is, actually just finishing the thing that is important to you can really give you a sense of achievement and be brilliant.
And I think that is something that we all probably can experience, that realization that there have been times when there's things we've wanted to do, we've started off, gone great guns, and then not finished it. And I agree that finishing something is definitely one of the hardest things. Starting it actually often isn't as hard. It's getting to that finishing point where you can say, yeah, I completed it.
I'm sure your writers kind of know what that feels like, that sense of how do I actually get to the end of this?
I definitely hold my hand up for that one. We have a question here from Sue. What was your inspiration for your first novel?
I had, well, obviously the identity thing probably was rattling around, but I had an image of a woman in a bath, and she had her toe stuck in the bath tap. And that was it. That's all I had. I didn't have anything. I didn't have her name. I had nothing other than she was just stuck in a cooling bath, and she couldn't reach the tap. She couldn't get her toe out. And I had a friend, another coach, who's a Swiss friend. Every now and again, I'd bump into her on various bits and bobs and conferences, and she'd always say to me, "How's the woman in the bath?" And I'd be like, "Oh, languishing," And and then I was journaling in a cafe one day, and I was thinking about kind of role models that women at 50 plus have, and who do we have that's actually inspiring? So much of it is sort of celebrity, which doesn't really float my boat. So where are the inspiring role models, if you like? And then that got me thinking about identity and notions of femininity and all those sorts of things. So it's a kind of a happy sad, it's a sort of a book to read on a rainy day or when you're on the beach or something. It's not quite chick lit, but it's a laugh and cry type book. But hopefully laugh more than cry. But there are those serious themes behind it. And the second one, which is is quite kooky, that the theme of that is intimacy. How do we allow for intimacy and trust in our relationships. So I think I'm weaving in positive psychology, but doing it through fiction, you know.
So how long do you think Alice Larson had been incubating in that bath before you finally got the chance to write about her?
She was a bit pruny. I think I think I started thinking about her in about 2000, I want to say 2017, and I wrote it last year. Yeah, but you know, back to your point, Lucinda, I think the timing came because when it started, it was 4 months, and it was solid. It was just consistent. It was funny. I didn't even know how it was going to end or where it was going to go. I was probably one of those pantser writers on it, but yeah, it sort of told itself in the end.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. It's been absolutely brilliant having you here today, Denise. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for your comments and your questions. I'm just going to give a little bit of a push for other things that are happening on Goldster. I don't know if you're all aware of our Goldster programs. I'm just going to put this quick link in the chat. So the couple that we've got on at the moment are Karma Life, which I think is something we could all do, and confidence through movement. So do look up on the Goldster website, and if you're looking on Goldster, just look for programs at the very top of the page. And also on Facebook this week, if you're following us on social media on Facebook, there's a whole week devoted to the menopause, which seems very appropriate after we've been saying the word midlife all the time. So if anybody wants to look at that, take part in it, to comment on it, do go to the Goldster Facebook page. And remember as well that we are on Instagram and Twitter. If you're not following us on any or all of those platforms, please do engage with us on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. And we are aware that Twitter's been quite slow, just because, you know, there's a few people trying to do lots and lots of things, but they have said that, you know, Twitter is definitely back on board. So please don't give up on Goldster on Twitter, and do follow us on Facebook and Instagram as well. Thank you. Some lovely comments coming in. Thanks very much for a brilliant talk. I've read Anthology. Oh, and it's the best recipe for life. Yay, thank you so much for that. Another person saying thank you, very interesting. So that's brilliant. And Joe, thank you very much for this, Joe. Joe has put in the Facebook and the Instagram handles, and I'm just going to put the quick Twitter on there. Can I find it? Can I find it on time, or is Joe going to beat me to it? It's just at Goldster Club on Twitter. I'm just going to put it in there as well. Okay, everybody, it's been great. Thank you so much. And and we've excellent. So, and we've got a comment here. Brilliant. Thank you. The internet was very glitchy, but great to hear what you both had to say. Thank you very much for that. That's really good. Take care, everybody. I will see you next week. Humphrey will be back later this week, and I'll be back in the following week. So I'll speak to you soon. Take care, everybody. And thank you, Denise. We're going to turn our videos off now, and I'll see you soon.